Hi, I'm Caroline Howard, a biblical counselor and certified life breakthrough coach.
And I'm Chris Oneth, marriage and family therapist and executive director of Downey Park Counseling Associates.
Welcome to our next question, where we attempt to answer the questions of life through conversations in psychology and Christianity.
Remember, this is a place of discovery and definitely not the final answer. Welcome.
I want to be like Poltergeist. We're back.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Episode 7.
Episode 7.
Okay, what is identity?
That's our question.
Maybe even
You're
what is...
supposed to say it like more professional.
What is
and
our identity?
Our next question is...
Okay,
what
let's
is our
do
identity?
it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but
Are
then
we
that...
just jumping right in? We're not asking a
Ask a question. Ask away. Am I supposed to ask it or you?
Well, I asked the last two.
Whose turn? Oh, my
I have
goodness.
not. Well. So I was kind
pressure.
of laughing because it was like Caleb is doing something. Just did. I mean, you're still doing amazing things.
Okay.
He did his camp thing. You did your thing, and then I was like, I hadn't done nothing.
Oh.
I did count this morning how many times I've been to Kaiser in the last month. You know, because I have a kid with a broken shoulder who had a seizure. I had a kid with a concussion who's good now. And it was 13 times.
A baker's dozen.
I know.
Wow.
That's how I remembered.
So here's your
wish we
question.
were done.
Here's the
Okay.
question. What do you find yourself talking about the most?
What do I find myself talking about the most?
Sure.
Well, it depends on who it's with.
That's true.
You know, if I'm at work, I'm talking about counseling things.
Well, that doesn't count.
Okay, baseball.
That doesn't count. Okay.
The Giants. I mean, it's baseball season, so
Sure.
I'm constantly like checking the standings and when's
So
the next
you,
game.
yes, totally. Totally. So you really identify as a Giants fan.
I identify as a child of God who loves the Giants. Nice try.
I tried to get
nice
you there.
try.
Yeah.
You forget what I do for a living.
True. Grr. Turn the tables. Blast.
I'm like, no, wait. From March to October, I identify as a Giants fan.
Okay.
And then the rest of the year, I'm a child of God. No.
Oh, you got to float around. And...
yeah. I'm just kidding.
Caleb has an
like,
audible gasp.
I have to quit. I can't do this anymore. This is taking the wrong.
I think that's where the Giants become an idol, right?
Oh.
I think that's
Yes,
good
it is.
point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
that is
think
true.
if the Giants make it to October, right? Because we don't always make it to October. I will admit it can become an idol.
Yeah, Chris,
Where-
we might need to stage like an intervention
That's
here.
true.
Right. Where
Yeah.
it's like
It's
I'm
true.
literally planning meals of what dinner will be best on the sofa while watching a Giants
I see.
game. And
Lots
I'm
of burritos.
sorry, kids, we can't. No nachos.
Oh.
Hot dogs. I
Oh.
mean, we're talking like ball food. Yeah.
So we have talked about taking my truck to a ball game because
Yes.
it has all the cooking
And
equipment
having a
on
tailgate
it.
party.
Absolutely.
And yet we haven't done it yet.
For some reason.
I haven't even been to a game yet this season, which is a shocker.
I'm so
Normally,
sorry.
I've been to multiple games.
Yeah.
It's
I
been
could use some of the
busy.
bay right now because it's
Oh my gosh.
104 degrees right now in Modesto.
I'd say let's go, but we're moving and I'm still busy packing.
Ooh, that is so not fun.
in
Yes,
the
Melanie
heat.
said she was helping you pack or
She
something.
was. She's so. I know we were gonna have a garage sale tomorrow, but it's gonna
Okay.
be 108.
What's going to happen with Melanie's plants that you're babysitting?
This is embarrassing to say in front of everybody. I have lost custody of quite a few of them already. She walks. So they moved to a trailer.
for
Let
you.
me just clarify. They moved to a trailer, and I
Exciting.
do not. I have 2 black thumbs. I do not. I mean, literally, look, my nail polish is black. I do not have green thumbs, but Melanie apparently loves me and treasures our friendship and
Yes.
thinks nothing will ever break us apart.
Okay.
So she gave me, I think, like 7 or 8 of her babies, her plants,
Yes.
to care for until you build your house.
Yes.
I've killed one.
Uh-oh.
One has died.
Oh, no.
And then when I informed her of
The
that.
heat has been taken off of me because I've killed
Yeah.
a number of plants.
Oh, well, see, I'm only at 1. And
Usually it's not because of the lack of water, it's because I'll step on them or something. And I'm not talking about, well, this is
Not
weird.
potted
Not
plant.
in the
Okay,
house. It'll
okay.
be like outside
No,
and I'll
these are-
inadvertently
she
step
gave me
on
all
a plant.
house plants. These are all house
Oh,
plants.
wow. Geez.
Yeah, and then she confiscated 2 more, and she was like, "I'm taking these home," and like, and then when she came to help me pack last week or whenever that was, I can't remember She took a couple more because we're moving, and she's like, I could take these, and there were a couple she tried to take, and I said, no, you can't have them. So I think I'm down to 1, 2, 3. I have 3.
Okay.
I've kept 3 alive.
Wow.
Well, the other ones were alive. They were just
these are your
they
expert
they
plants.
just needed some love.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about identity.
So our next question is.
Our next question is, what is
What is our
identity?
identity?
Well, it could be, what is our identity, or how do we define identity, and how does that play into? It's an important question. I love how we kind of move. This is a habit of mine to tell you why it's important. Here's why it's important, and this is why. Because oftentimes, yes, as a man thinketh, he is or she is. So these things that we think about, and again, our culture is not real fond of us thinking for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So to be able to have that connection and self-reflection is vitally important.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to say, hey, these are the aspects of identity, and even these are the aspects of my identity, and even remind ourselves of those things.
Yeah. If anybody wants to argue that society culture doesn't want us thinking for ourselves, watch a baseball game.
Oh.
Because you cannot look in any
We've
direction.
Talked about this.
Yeah.
We've talked about this.
Without seeing like 10 ads.
Yeah.
Look at a bus. Drive down the road. I'm like,
any sort of
no
advertising.
wonder there's more car crashes these days. There's stuff for you to look at everywhere, and you can't keep your eye on the road because you're like, oh, what's that billboard say? What's that say?
It does truly speak to listen, advertising is a huge multi-billion-dollar business every year. Yeah. And there's a reason for that, is because our identities can be molded, right? Anytime you see, and I am guilty of this, I have like stickers of some of my equipment on my truck.
I'm just looking at all the stickers on your
on my computer.
Yeah.
Even that, right?
Yeah.
It's like this, I find a sticker and I like, this identifies me.
Oh, do you want to see? I'm so godly.
Oh, wow.
What I
but
identify
God,
as.
and I have, the Gadsden
Set your joy
flag.
on things eternal.
I have Hetch Hetchy Reservoir.
Oh, wait. Well, Caleb, what do you have?
Ex-Overland.
Well, I have a lot of stuff for climbing, which I've been into recently. Some music that I enjoy. I have my own salsa brand here. That's some self-promotion.
Wait,
there.
you make salsa?
I do. I'll have to bring you guys some.
Yes, you will.
Oh, my goodness.
Wait,
You've been holding out on us.
Do you sell this? Can we make money for you? Like, have people buy it?
I don't think I would be able to keep up with the demand.
Oh.
So
that's awesome.
it's exclusive.
Look at it.
Oh, that's a vote of confidence for yourself.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Oh, man. Okay,
I love that. I would not be able to keep up with that.
I can't wait to try
it's
this.
Salsa Caleb.
Chips Hot Salsa. That's the brand.
Tip Top Salsa.
Chips
Chip.
Hot Salsa.
Chips
Hot Salsa.
Who's Chip?
Me. I'm Chip. That's
Chip?
me. Yep.
Do we call you Chip?
It was
now?
a nickname back in the day, and it
Look
works
at you,
well for a
Chip.
salsa brand. So.
Can we bring it back?
Sure. You're welcome to.
Nice.
I'm not opposed.
Wow, chips. Chip. I want to say it plural, but you're really just one chip. You're a chip off the old block there.
Okay.
I love this. Okay, back to identity.
So back to identity. So I took
now that we know Caleb's true identity.
Yes, that's true.
Finally.
The Salsa Man.
Finally.
Some definition, Merriam-Webster dictionary. There's a A, B, C, D. Anyway.
Okay.
The distinguishing character or personality of an individual. The relation established by psychological identification. Now, this is very interesting. So this indicates that identity is malleable because our psychological identification oftentimes can shift based on who knows what, right?
Okay.
The condition of being the same with something described or asserted. So our identity can be the same as, for example, you're a Giants fan.
Yes, I am.
So you see someone else with a Giants sticker and you're like, cool.
Yeah.
And you have long conversations with Mike Clemens, who is also a Giants fan.
We do.
And you guys connect on that level.
And we wear Giants gear on Monday.
That's what happens.
We take over the office.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I have not a stitch of Giants clothing.
Redheads do the same thing.
They do. Oh, it's all a means of trying to connect relationally.
Yeah, redheads will,
something.
like there's some. I remember being with a friend one time at a. I think we were at a concert. And a redhead was behind me and like started playing with my hair and was like, oh, and, I had no idea who she was, but it was no big deal because she was a redhead. And my friend was like, is that normal? I was like, yeah. That's what redheads do.
Oh, so you're touching each other's hair.
just connected.
Weird.
If you're a redhead, it's not weird.
But wouldn't
You're
that
just-
make
you're just
redheads
jealous.
weird?
You're just jealous.
Jealous
That's why
of
you're
what?
making fun of it. Of hair.
Of
it
hair?
being
No,
red.
actually, it's very easy to live without hair.
She went there.
Okay, so there's a few kind of follow-up things that don't. I mean, they're
Okay.
not very.
So
Anyway,
this
I cut
this
and
question
pasted.
here was a question that says, "What makes a person's identity?"
Sure.
And this says what makes, which again, this is just this definition is personality traits,
Yes.
abilities, likes and dislikes, your belief system, your moral code, and the things that motivate you.
I love it. I love it. So here's another one. This is from the Berkeley Wellness Institute, and
Okay.
it says, we can define identity as a person's sense of self, established by their unique characteristics, affiliations, and social roles. Moreover, identity has continuity as one feels to be the same person over time, despite many changes in their circumstances. Now, I don't know if I might argue a little bit with that last thing, because our identity shifts over the years, right?
Yeah.
Prior to me being married, I was just, Chris Oneth. I liked video games, and I liked food. I liked riding bicycle. No, what did I like? I'm not sure what I liked.
You've been
But then
married so long,
I
you don't
found
remember.
Melanie Jones, and I liked her.
I like her.
We got married, and then I became a husband as part of my identity.
Yeah.
Then I started having kids, and that became part of my identity. So
Yeah.
so it expands, and it expands, and then maybe it can even contract.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, we tie our identity into what we do for a living.
Yes.
Yes.
That can be our identity.
Okay.
Our culture can be our identity. Our
Yes.
ethnicity can be our identity.
Now that's an interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because for many, if there's something I identify with and it's important to me, for example, if I identify with my ethnicity, I'm like German and English and something else. I don't know. You identify as German apparently, because I don't know, Dad's off the boat, or
His parents were, he wasn't, but yeah, he's
did you
full-blooded.
have a grandmother named Helga?
Helma.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Father named Helmut.
Helma, and my middle name, or not my middle name. Well, my maiden name is Ernst. Ernst.
Ernst. Oh, I
Ernst.
thought you said angst.
Yeah,
That fits.
of course.
You're just all bound up and uptight all the time.
Exactly.
There you
Aren't
go.
I though?
But it's interesting how an ethnic culture can mean so much to some people, and
Yeah.
then others in that ethnic culture, they're like, no.
Yeah.
Because then what do you get when you have, for example, you have someone who's African American, and they're raised by a white family,
Yeah.
or my kids, we had kids in the neighborhood who were mixed race. They had a white mother and African American father.
Yeah.
Father wasn't around, so they were around white grandparents and everything else, and the way they articulated themselves sounded very white, Caucasian, right? However, to look at them, they look totally African American.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that's a tough thing, because then where does a kid fit? And that can bring a lot of angst.
I'm so glad I could give you a word.
And so potentially the path out of that could be, well, maybe I'm not going to identify with that as much. I'm going to identify with something else.
Yeah.
So that's some situations where it can shift and everything else.
Yeah. There was this
Take it
meme.
away.
There was this meme that I saw because it's about the whole identity thing. I just have to say it because it keeps making me chuckle in my head. Where the gal is like on the phone. It's her boss calling, going, "Hey, like you're supposed to be at work. Where are you?" And she says, "Well, I identify as transparent."
Oh,
And then you could say, "Who? Where?"
there you go. I suppose.
It's very funny.
So
For me, it was.
again, this is important, because if we don't establish our identity, that can bring a lot of unmooring and insecurity.
Yeah.
And so, yes, on one hand, it's our tendency to gravitate toward groups and things that we can say, aha, this is me. I am part of a Triumph motorcycle thing.
Right.
I'm not opposed to, making friends with other motorcyclists or even joining groups, and we go out and ride and no longer rob and pillage, but we help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And fight crime.
Right.
I don't know what that looks like, but
do we call you Robin Hood?
I don't know. Okay. I'll be in the back of the scenes. I'll be like, okay, I'll get to that. Oh, a little dangerous, so I'll stand on the thing.
I'll bring snacks.
I have, other overlanders. I see another truck on the road and it's got gear like mine. I'm like, hey. Now, even within those groups, there are people that are tearing at each other. Oh, I identify with this brand or that brand, which shows how malleable and how we cling to those things to try and set ourselves apart. Now, there's this strange thing in our culture and in society where, we want to be a part of a community, but we want to be individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reflection of even our 3 relationships, right? Is like, I want a sense of self. I want a good relationship with myself. But I also want to belong.
Right.
So there's this tension between that. And it's like, I establish my individuality by dressing like my group, which is interesting.
Right.
I mean, you look at high school, and my wife in high school would just hang out with anyone. So she had friends all over the place. So she'd hang out with, some cheerleaders. She'd hang out with the goths. She'd hang out with whomever. The arts. She was an artist type person, so she'd hang out with the art people. And she would always say, she goes, they're just as hierarchical and cliquey as the next group.
Yes.
Looking at the next group, or the Xeno, right, the other.
Yeah.
And saying, well, here's why I'm better and what qualifies me over them. And then what we do is we create stories about the other, may or may not be true, and then we so other them that somehow it keeps us safe and okay, which is a human trait.
Yeah.
I think I knocked that away from myself. Okay, so identity as far as the 3 relationships in our culture, right? Our 3 relationships: the relationship with ourselves, our thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and actions. Our relationship, of course, with ourselves in the 4 parts of ourselves: emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. Right. I have a relationship with my body. I am tall, so that enables me to dunk a basket. Yeah. So then I become a basketball player, and then I identify with that. Yeah. Or I'm a redhead.
Heck yeah, you wish.
And so I start even like mentally shifting towards these quote unquote virtues of quote unquote redheads.
Right. We're sarcastic. We're sassy.
I don't know. Not all redheads.
Apparently, we eat people's souls.
That's weird.
Heard. I know.
Yeah,
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Right.
But yes.
So as far as our identity with others, that has a lot to do with culture or people group. Yeah. Right. And even social structures. So I'm a grandpa.
Right. Yeah.
I am a father. I am also a boss. I hate to say that. I'm a boss. I'm a boss. No, not your boss, but I have other people that work for me.
Right. You're a business owner.
And I can tell them to ignore you and not do anything for you.
That's not true, because I don't want to get into that here.
They like you better than me. That's what you're saying? Is that what you're saying it with your eyes? Yes. So
the red hair speaks loudly.
Right. You will cut them. So culture now. Okay, we get into identity as far as culture is concerned, and culture spans a lot of things. It spans the relationship with the environment or the external, in food, in the way we dress. Right. And maybe even the way we build our houses. Yeah. One of the big, they talk about one of the tragedies of the modern era is that there's so much homogeneity or sameness among architecture that, 50 years ago, you could tell a place by the buildings around. You could tell if you were in the South or in the East Coast. Yeah. Now it's so homogenous that it's like, I don't know if I'm in Southern California, East Coast, I suppose by the weather,
Right.
You can tell you're in Florida because of all the big nets over the yards because of the bugs.
I don't know, because when I go to Idaho, they don't have stucco.
Oh.
Yeah, and my cousins always said that, like, you guys have like stucco, so much houses with.
That's because they spray it on.
Outside. But they don't do that in other places. I know.
Well, there you go. Idaho's different.
Idaho's different.
Yeah. So even the landscape, right? Even the landscape shapes our culture.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have a fishing culture if you're on the water, and that's going to start to identify, hey, we're fishermen.
Yeah.
Or we're on the boat. So there's so much environmentally that shape.
I'm a city girl.
City girl.
You're
yes.
a nature guy.
Totally. So environment includes place, food, customs, traditions, right? That also ties into how we identify. And again, if I can emphasize, we have a lot more autonomy over what we choose to identify with.
Yeah.
Or what our identity is than we think we do. So I guess my encouragement is to like start to be aware. I would encourage anyone listening to start to be aware of, how do I identify? Do you identify as someone who's suffering? Do you identify someone who, and that's a spiritual aspect of ourselves,
right?
And then what am I suffering with? Am I suffering with the environment and the circumstance that I'm in?
Yeah.
Am I suffering with my relationships and that none of them are going the way I want to, or they are against me and I'm having to fight that? Who knows?
Yeah.
Something to examine.
Okay. It just made me think, like, do I identify as a victim? Because you have people with victim mentalities, and so
that is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Even if you're a persecutor, you have the same ingredients as a victim.
Right.
Yeah.
So your identity can hurt you or harm you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it becomes so comfortable that it's hard to then be self-aware and say, is this really helping me?
Right, because we put it on like a comforting thing. We put it on like it's part of ourselves, like a piece of clothing, like a warm blanket we wrap around ourselves.
Well, and then we defend it to the death.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I hate to say it, like guys in the gym, MMA, all that stuff, they're like, okay, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say badass, like identity. And to me, that goes back to our previous discussion about masculinity, right? And that kind of identity is almost like I see it as a scared boy, doesn't quite know what to do with that, to be okay with some of the uncomfortable feelings, so they've got to be able to dominate people physically.
Okay.
Instead of meeting their needs in other healthy ways, then it becomes and then my favorite is badass rule number 1. So badass rule number 1 states, and I don't know if I made this up or heard it somewhere, that if you are truly a badass, you don't have to tell people you are a badass. You don't have to have a tattoo or a bumper sticker or something. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's probably a good idea. You don't have to exert that and say, because that usually means you're afraid in some way.
Yeah.
And you're trying to compensate or make up for it.
It's funny because
cool your jets.
That reminds me of the last time I got a tattoo.
Oh.
Which was with your wife.
Uh-oh.
And we were talking about the numbing cream that you can get, so it doesn't hurt. And I was talking to him about the guy, and he's like, no, there's a point where you can use that. I'm like, well, what point do you get to use that? He's like, when you no longer know how many tattoos you have.
Oh.
When you can't count them.
Oh.
That's when you get to use the numbing cream.
Wait, when you get to use the numbing cream?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. So before, if like I can tell you how many tattoos, I can still count them.
Oh.
So I'm not man enough yet or tattooed enough yet to use the numbing cream.
Even though women have a higher pain tolerance?
I have a seriously high pain tolerance. Redheads have a high pain tolerance.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, women do anyway because they have to push people out of
we do
crazy parts.
Or we get them cut out.
yes. And the guys would like tap, I'm done. Okay, so being aware that our identity has to do with our relationship with ourselves, others, and the environment, and all the inwards and outwards things. As Christians, what is our biblical identity?
As children of God. I mean, that's like...
Well, that's so easy, Caroline. Can you... No.
But I mean...
You're a child of God.
Right?
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, I think that oftentimes, because, and I'm sure you get this too, you get people in your office who are just like, I don't know who I am anymore.
Yes.
And I'll say for me, for me as a mom, my oldest is almost 25, so I've been a mom for almost 25 years. You do lose your sense of identity.
Sure.
Like, who am I? And I think as a Christ follower, ultimately knowing that my identity is in Christ has kept me from completely losing my identity as a mom.
How?
Because I know my identity. Like my identity.
Now it sounds like circular reasoning. Like how? Like I want some practical.
So what's wrong with that? How?
How do you practice your identity in Christ?
Right. How do I practice my identity
look,
in Christ?
You practice your identity as a mom.
Right.
The kids need something. You're
right.
Jenny on the spot.
So I spend time with God on the daily. I
Okay.
talk to Him. I build a relationship with Him.
Okay, I like it. Okay.
I talk about Him to others.
Okay.
I listen. I don't just talk. I try to listen to. I mean, I probably don't do that as well as I should, but I do spend time just sitting in quiet and listening to God. So it's a relationship and identity that I'm constantly building on.
Okay.
And it is that comfort,
like that.
right? In my times of need, that's the identity. That's the blanket I wrap around me that brings me comfort that I will defend to the end.
So, are there times when you need, like, what are the times you need to reassure yourself that even more? Like, no, I'm a child of God. What, like?
When I feel like I don't matter or I don't feel like I'm worth it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you don't have God, then I don't know. What do you think you would turn to? The redheaded Giants fan.
Wine.
Yes, my identity is I'm an alpha.
But so here's interesting because this just came to my mind. When I know I need my identity in Christ the most, is when my identity that comes from being a mom or being a counselor or something else is being challenged.
Okay.
Right.
So it's this thing that you enjoy, that you find a certain level of identification with, and then that's hit some rough patches and you're like, uh-oh. Now that's a great point because
right, it is. It's when I'm struggling as a mom and I want to say, right, as moms often do, I'm a bad mom.
Right.
And instead of going there, I go back and remember, no, I'm a child of God.
Aha.
And that's ultimately what and God doesn't see me as this bad mom.
So then your identity is not dependent
child.
on your performance of your kids.
My identity solely is based upon what Christ did for me.
And whether or not your kids are like, Mom, you're the greatest ever. It's so great.
I no longer need when my identity is so settled in Christ.
Yeah, okay.
I don't need my kids to tell me I'm a great mom.
Okay. Yeah. Because and to that point, identity fundamentally answers two questions: who am I, and what is my purpose?
Right.
So to your point, if your purpose only in life is raising kids, well, you got your last one about to be out, and of course you got a special needs daughter
and a 12-year-old, so I got a ways to go.
Thank God my identity can sustain for
I know, right?
till he's 35. No, I'm just kidding.
It's why God gave me a disabled child that has to live with me forever, because He knew I was going to struggle with that one.
There you go. No, but it's a great, as far as for moms are concerned. Now, again, being a mom, being a dad, super important, super awesome gift from the Lord. Mm-hmm. But if we hang our entire identity on that and say this is, and then everything we do surrounds that, when that ends, when that season goes away, we are going to have a tendency to want to keep that season around.
And every season is going to go away if you identify with your position at work.
Yes.
If you identify with your baseball team, with your football team, if you identify in any of your abilities, those are going to fade away. Right. Which is why it's so important to identify as a child of God. Okay. Because that will never go away.
So then our three relationships, right? Even our 4 parts of self, emotional, spiritual, mental, physical, right? And the things we do, the things we have, they can serve as pieces that give a segment of our identity only if they point back to God. Mm-hmm. Because any one of those things, God can say, hey, that season's over. Right? Yeah. And if our whole entire identity is in the created thing, whether it be our created children or our created hobbies, if our whole entire identity is there, then once that's gone, we're like empty.
Right. Well, it's like the big umbrella is our identity in Christ.
Okay.
And underneath that is because I'm still a mom.
Sure. Sure, absolutely.
I'm still a counselor.
Yeah.
I'm still a daughter. I'm still a friend.
What are some of the, as a counselor, what are some of the instances where you see people having the biggest identity struggle?
I would say in relationships.
Okay.
Like relationships with human beings. And
Okay.
well, and usually that comes because they don't have a good relationship with Christ.
Okay.
And you can't have a good relationship with a human being if you don't have a good relationship with Christ. Now, I know people who aren't believers are not going to believe that.
Right.
Or follow that. I mean,
Okay.
you could have a relationship with them, but do we really know what relationship is without God?
How
fully?
So? Yeah, no. Right.
I mean, we do, but
well, I think
okay,
we can
so
have a
here's the
shadow of
interesting
it.
thing,
We
and
can
maybe
have
I
a shadow of it.
Yeah, we get a shot. But here's the interesting thing: is that a lot of times people will come to me and say, "I don't know how to have a relationship with God."
Oh.
And I'll say, "Well, how do you build your relationship with your spouse, with the kid?" With
okay.
that? Oh, well, I hang out with them. We spend time together. We sit and we talk.
Okay.
We do things. Okay. That's
There you
how
go.
you have
Right.
a
Okay.
relationship
Sure.
with God.
Okay.
You know, and
you go ride mountain bikes with him?
Yeah.
With God?
I hope you take him with you because you get concussions a lot.
Yes. Yes,
He's
I do.
protecting you. Yeah. Like,
Okay.
go on that mountain bike ride and you talk to God.
No, I totally agree
Yeah.
with that. I totally agree with that.
I love talking to God when I'm driving down the road by myself because that rarely happens. I usually have
Okay.
kids in the car. And
Okay.
so it is. It's just you find time for the relationships that are important to you.
Okay. Yes, that's true. So, taken from Desiring God Ministries website, here's a quote. Christian selfhood is not defined in terms of who we are in and of ourselves. It is defined in terms of what God does to us and the relationship he creates with us and the destiny he appoints for us. God made us who we are so we could make known who he is. Our identity is for the sake of making known his identity.
Yeah. I like that.
Now, if that's true, and I totally believe it is, right? How does that play out in our relationships? Well, instead of relying on necessarily our culture, which is not a bad thing.
Right.
And by the way, this is a side note on culture. I believe culture is a tangible observation of a people group's desire to connect with God.
Yeah.
Right. So you look at culture. What is culture? Culture is, a sense of place, a sense, food, dress, customs, rituals, all that stuff.
Yep.
And in every single culture, God is folded into that. Now, granted, they could even go after false gods, right?
Yeah.
Different ethnic
Different
cultures or
religions,
whatever.
yeah.
And in most every culture now, to this day, I want to say most every culture has been exposed to Christianity, right? Mm-hmm. So for India, for example, India has more Christians than they do Sikhs.
Oh, wow. I
Right.
didn't know that.
Right.
That's cool.
At least the numbers I saw a few years ago bore that out.
Okay.
Back,
could've
a number of years ago,
Don't quote us.
22 million Christians, 17 million Sikhs.
Wow.
Right. And so the British, for one, the British occupied India for a long time, the British Raj. There's
Yeah.
my history person. The second, Doubting Thomas evangelized India. Well, maybe that's first, and then the Raj is second.
Okay.
So there is for example, even in that culture, right? And the customs, the foods, all these other things. Yes, they could be influenced by the other faith traditions, but they can also be turned over to worshiping the God of gods.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just like the Christmas tree and the Tannenbaum and all this, okay, it was a pagan thing, and now it's a Christian thing. So woohoo.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
So how do we know what our identity is? How do we know how do we know what that warm blanket is that we're putting on? How can we figure that out?
Well, I think so. If we find ourselves, and again, it's not a bad thing to, it's not a bad thing to kind of get into stuff, have hobbies, all that other deal, right? But I think when we don't have it with when we don't have it with an open hand, that's when it can create a problem. That's when it becomes so detrimental to us that it takes something deep away from us if the thought of losing it. Yeah. Like, for example, my job, right? Yeah. I was a teacher. Well, okay, before that, I worked at Gallo, right? Where do you work, Gallo? Oh, yeah. I even see people today with the green overalls. I'm like, hey, you work at Gallo. It's like, I identify with that a little bit. Yeah. Right? Then I was a teacher. Yeah. Right? And if that was like, man, I meet people and that is the thing they talk about most, is their teaching. Every conversation. Or, hey, they talk about most their horse or their overlanding stuff or their thing, and that becomes this huge part of them. Yeah. And again, it's a gift, but if you really just bank on all that, then you're going to find ways to it becomes an idol, and then you lift that idol up higher and higher. Right. So then your idol is better than other people's idol, even if you're in the same club. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, my thing's better than your thing. Yeah. And if you don't have the thing that you want, then you feel inadequate, you feel without. And so there's a type of competition there, which our culture, loves spending competition. Yeah. And so it becomes very precarious and very dependent on your efforts and your ability to keep that going. Whereas our identity in the Lord, in its perfect place, is not a competition. Right. So if you find yourself going to church and there's this competition to be more spiritual or serving or whatever, man, that's a red flag. It's like, look, my identity is not that I do things better. My identity isn't even that I'm perfect. My identity is if I'm a child of God, then I can confess some pretty crazy stuff. Yeah. And I know I'm still loved. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So if in fact we are children of God, that then transmogrifies our identity in the relationship with ourselves. Yep. Because now a relationship with ourselves isn't just connecting to ourselves for ourselves' sake. Right. It's connecting to the Holy Spirit. Right. So emotional, and spiritual, it becomes mental, a healthy connection to ourselves, right? Yes. Where we're no longer, right? Because you can have connection to yourself, but it could be unhealthy where all you're doing is spitting negative stuff at yourself. Totally. Where if your identity is in God, it's all going to be His grace and glory and mercy on you. Yes. And that's part of the sanctification process is getting to that point of like bathing in grace, right? Being overwhelmed by it, washed by it. Yep. Usually the self-punishment comes sans or without God. Now it can come, that's funny because a lot of people do it thinking it's God. Yeah, that's so sad. So start to purge that idea. Yeah. Because if you're in your mind beating yourself up and you are not accepting blessings of the Lord, guess what? That's not God. Nope. It's someone else. Yep. Yep. So if I identify something that in me that says I got to work harder or do better, right? Then that is not identifying with the finished work of Christ. And so it's saying, I don't have this one more thing, or I got to have this, I got to have that. And that includes if we're in a body of believers and there is an attitude of you've got to perform, you got to be better, all this other stuff. Now, now, believe it or not, we do have to show fruits of our faith. Yeah. But that comes through an overwhelming gratitude, which is worship. Yeah. So I take part in works out of a tremendous and overwhelming thank you. In fact, I would take part in works for the same reason that I go to the coast and watch the ocean. Right. Or I'm on the mountain bike or whatever else, right? Yeah. So so my relationship and my identity in the Lord informs the relationship I have with myself. Yes. Right? It informs the relationship I have with others, Christ in the community of believers, right? And so then I also have my 4 parts, emotional, spiritual, mental, physical, that is also connecting to others. Now, if I'm part of a body of believers And the message there is that I need to do more, work harder, be more perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe I'm in the wrong community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because look, I can find that in my motorcycling. You got to be better at that thing. You didn't get that right part. Why'd you get those tires? Those are lame. Right? That's
right.
I just find that everywhere else in the world. Why would I want to go to a Body of Believers and still receive that? Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
If I go to Body Believers, I want to surrender. Mm-hmm. And I want that to be okay. And I want to know that you're surrendering too. And it's like, awesome. That's the real deal.
Yeah.
So total identity as a believer with other believers. So then it informs my environment, the Father and the authority of His Word and even creation, right? His Word / creation. So His creation magnifies His glory, although it's 104 degrees out. That is still like, Lord, magnified. This is not even kind of how powerful you are. Not even kind of.
Right. Right.
The best is like the spring day, and it's just like, oh my gosh, birds tweeting, right. They're not like dying. So if my identity is in the Lord and I am a part of creation, then I can fully appreciate that. And even creation that doesn't go my way, like the environment is like, okay,
right.
The tree blew down on my house. That hasn't happened, although it felt like it was going to blow in our trailer this past winter. But even that, it's like, Lord, okay, you have this.
Yep.
I am identified as a child in you. You are not going to abandon me. And my wife keeps on saying, my wife keeps like, He didn't bring us out here to die. He didn't bring us out here to die. We're going to have a house someday. He didn't bring us out here to die. And it's all in His timing too. Yeah. Right.
I guess that we have a swarm of bees that have made
how fun is that?
A home on our front porch.
Okay.
Which makes walking in and out of the house really fun.
Lots of swatting.
They were so docile at first, and now
it's the red hair.
It probably is. We are almost an entire house full of redheads, and now all of a sudden they're trying to attack us.
Oh boy!
But it is like remembering, like, these are creatures of God, and they have purpose. And the beekeeper's coming tomorrow.
Oh, good.
To hopefully rid us of them.
Awesome.
But yes, God is in that.
Yeah. So there it is.
Okay.
A word on identity, and one of the reasons we're discussing this is because this is going to come up in later discussions.
Yeah. There'll be more next time.
Yes, and it will fit. The puzzle pieces will fit as we progress and stuff like that. Because as we bring up psychology and even counseling and stuff like that, we have to be careful not to identify with our traits, right?
Yes.
Solely because if we're working hard to change them and we identify them, then we won't let go of them.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
All right, good stuff.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining us today as we continue our journey talking about life's many questions.
To stay connected with us, you can follow us at Downey Park Counseling on both Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow Caroline on Instagram at Relatable Caroline. And make sure you tune in next week for our next question.